All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. We've had quite a few people trickle in, and I'm sure more will join, but we will be recording today's webinar. And so we will have the opportunity to send this out both for you and for any colleagues who may not be able to join the conversation today. Thank you, as I mentioned before, for joining. My name is Bryan Ashton. I serve as the managing director at Trellis Strategies. And I'll be here to kind of welcome and set the stage for our conversation today before turning it over to Allyson and Abby to talk more specifically about the Some College No Credential and Non-Matriculating Student Surveys that we are administering this spring. A little bit of housekeeping. I already mentioned that we will be recording the webinar today and sending it out after. And so that will allow you to see the slides and have any clarity that you need, and also circulate it to colleagues on campus that you may work with. But we will also be taking questions. And so we'll have plenty of time at the end of the conversation for questions, but please do not hesitate to use the Q&A feature and the chat feature during the webinar, and we can try to respond to those between Allyson, Abby, and myself during the conversation, in addition to opening it up for Q&A on the back end of the webinar as well. So, Allyson, if we can advance to the first slide here, I wanted to give everybody a little bit of a background around who Trellis Strategies is. I think many of you on the call are familiar with our organization, but I think it's always helpful to have a little bit of a refresher. We are a nonprofit research and technical assistance organization, and so we have worked in higher education or post-secondary research under a variety of different names for a little over 30 years. But really, for the past 2 years, we've been working under the brand of Trellis Strategies. And as an organization, we are dedicated to helping institutions collect and utilize data to help them better serve what we refer to as the modern learner. And so these are individuals, they may be traditional aged individuals, but they may have different priority sets that they are navigating as they pursue a post-secondary degree or credential. Or they may be those who have traditionally not been engaged in post-secondary education. And the data that's collected, we hope, will help you to think about campus policy, procedure, and practice in a way that can help you to better serve those learners. Since 2018, we've surveyed over 5.3 million students. Last year alone, we put together over 515 reports on behalf of over 250 partner organizations across the country. And so we're really thankful for everybody that we've had an opportunity to partner with in this work over the last few years. If we go to the next slide. As I mentioned, we are a nonprofit research and technical assistance organization, and we've been working and partnering with organizations during that time, but we've maintained a commitment to helping institutions to collect data that we think is super timely and relevant and important to collect. And so every year we do a free student financial wellness survey, which is part of our legacy mission as a nonprofit organization to help institutions to understand the intersectionality of finances and student success and the role that paying for college plays in those conversations. This year, we expanded our free survey suite to include 2 new free surveys. And so these are surveys that we've done for institutions over the years. And so these aren't new instruments. We've done them on behalf of partners throughout the last 5 years. But we are opening them up to be more national and free instruments this spring. And that's our non-matriculating student survey and our Some College No Credential survey. And as an organization, the primary purpose for this is to help us better understand why individuals are opting out of post-secondary education. We have had a lot of conversations about the value of post-secondary education and a lot of conversations about declining enrollment as it relates to declining demographics. But we also recognize that we have opportunity and a lot of room for improvement to continue to make sure that individuals opt into post-secondary education. And so non-matriculating students, they may have matriculated somewhere. It may not have been your institution, but helping you and us to understand how people are making those decisions about matriculating. And then for those with some college and no credential, really looking at what causes individuals to pause their education and what would incentivize them to return. And for us, that is a massive challenge that we're looking to address. We know that there's over 40 million people across the country with some college, no credential. It's a lot of human capital that we'd love to make sure is unlocked and put towards good use as we continue to grow the number of individuals across the country with a degree or credential. So I'm going to turn it over to Allyson now to kind of walk through. As I mentioned, these aren't new instruments. They're instruments that we've done in the past. We're opening them up now to be free national instruments to talk a little bit about some of our findings. And then Allyson and Abby will talk about sort of the pathway to participation for both of these instruments. But thank you all again for joining us here today.
Perfect. Thanks, Bryan. I'm Allyson Cornett. I'm the Director of Research here at Trellis Strategies. And we're going to get started with a few key findings from our last round of non-matriculating student surveys representing nearly 4,000 students. So this survey helps colleges and universities understand why students who are admitted to the institution and may even complete that registration process ultimately end up not matriculating. We also check in on how, for those students who are still interested in attending the school or university in question, how we can kind of get those students back to campus, and then also let the student provide us with their best contact information to facilitate those conversations. On this slide, we feature the top 5 reasons from these previous surveys that students indicated they did not matriculate at the institution in question. And this represents about 4,000 students total. And we can see that nearly 1/3 had personal finances factor into their decision, and 22% experienced financial aid issues. Cost of attendance was reported by 1 in 5 students in this last round of surveys. And with many students questioning the return on investment on college and its expenses, it's not surprising that finance-related causes are the top 3 reasons that we see here. And then we also saw personal and family reasons and employment-related issues come in at the 4th and 5th most prevalent cause for these students not matriculating at the institutions in question. A critical piece of the matriculation process is visiting campus. It allows prospective students to get a feel for the campus environment and culture, tour the facilities, meet students, faculty, and staff, and establish that personal connection with the institution. This often translates into higher matriculation rates, as students who visit or tour campus are more likely to enroll compared to their peers who did not. And in this survey, we asked respondents if they had visited or toured the campus in question. Overall, we saw that 43%, so more than 2 in 5 of these surveyed students had done so, leaving 57% who did not complete this crucial step, which may have ultimately influenced their decision not to attend the institution in question. We also checked in on students' future plans, including if they plan to enroll at the institution in question at some point in the future. Of these students, 15% plan to enroll at the institution at some point, whether that was 3 months from now, 6 months from now, more than a year, more than 2 years. And then we saw about 1/3 indicate they were unsure of their future plans, so they hadn't made up their mind one way or the other. So for the students who are unsure or do ultimately plan to return and enroll at the university or college that they didn't matriculate at, we also provide the institution their best contact information, including their phone number and their email. And we provide that back to the institution for targeted follow-up. And we also include in this list the timeframe in which the student wishes to enroll. Is it the next 6 months, a year, 2 years, or is it further out than that? And that really helps the college or university kind of triage those outreach efforts and reach out to the students who are kind of imminently planning to return to campus. So now we're going to move on to some of the key findings from our Some College No Credential survey. I wanted to start us off with a brief overview. As we know, many of those who start college ultimately never reach that finish line. According to NCES, that translates into about 36% of undergraduates, leading to 4.19 million Americans who have some college credits but no credential or degree. Here at Trellis Strategies, we can help re-enroll those students who have left the institution without that degree through research, planning, and direct outreach services. So this includes our National Some College No Credential survey, which we offer just like that non-matriculating student survey free of charge. And this instrument helps you answer the following kind of research and guiding questions. Why, in their own words, do students stop out of your university or college without a degree? And then how can your institution re-engage students who want to return and help them ultimately cross that finish line? And through the Some College No Credential survey, your institution will gain insights into why students did not persist, identify when they plan to return to higher education, including your institution, if that's in their plans. And just like that non-matriculating student survey, we also collect accurate contact information for you to reconnect with interested students. So in this slide, I've highlighted some of the key findings from our latest administration of the Some College No Credential survey, and this represents about 2,100 students. And just like the non-matriculation survey, we see personal finances and financial aid issues playing a large role in these students' decisions to stop out. Family and personal reasons were also prevalent, as well as academic issues and employment-related reasons. In the survey, we also check in to see if they have talked to a staff or faculty member about their decision to leave the institution, and only 1 in 5, just about 20% of the students had done so. So this can be a really critical lost opportunity to help those students develop a plan to stay or to return to school after they're ready to do so. We also check in and see if students plan to return to the institution, and 44% of those surveyed students plan to re-enroll at this college or university that they had departed in the future. And just like that other survey, we do ask if students have a tentative timeline for returning, if it's in the next 6 months, next year, or if it's farther out in the next 1 to 2 years. And this is all done with a goal of helping to help your institution better coordinate your efforts and outreach to those students. So that is all that I have as far as key findings. And now I'm going to hand it off to Abby to go over how to participate in these free survey opportunities.
Thanks, Allyson. So we're really excited to hopefully have lots of you on board for these, as Allyson said, free surveys. Kind of the first point on these is that they are 2 separate populations. So you can choose to administer both of them or one or the other of them, and we can administer them at the same time, but we would need to go through the process for both of the surveys. So that's a question I've received working with some institutions, so just wanted to lead with that. Can you go to the next slide, please, Allyson? All right. So the process to participate is that, and I believe we've already been in contact with many of you who are on this webinar. So really excited to kind of connect with you guys in this way. But the first step is just to review and approve the survey materials. So that includes the survey instrument, the informed consent, and the email campaigns, just to make sure that everything looks good on them there. There are a couple of questions on each survey that deal with specific offices on your campus. So we do have the ability to customize some of those offices. So for example, the financial aid office or the bursar's office or things like that, that different institutions call different names. That's something that we can look at. So that is part of the reviewing and approving those survey materials. Once you've approved those materials, you just shoot us an email back and say, hey, this looks great. We're on board to participate. And then we would get into those next steps. So the next step is to determine a 3-week administration window. And those administration windows are anytime between the beginning of March and mid-May. And so you choose a window that works best for you all. Since these are students who are not currently enrolled in your institution, and there's no need to avoid spring break or anything like that. So just finding a window that works for you all. And then you would securely submit the data file, which are the student names and emails, to us so that we're able to administer that survey directly through our Qualtrics system. So it's the same process to participate for both surveys. And you would be working with the same team, which is myself and Courtney Baker, who's the other research strategist at Trellis Strategies. We'd be working with you through the process on these. You can go to the next slide, Allyson. So yeah, like I mentioned, the timeline, we are currently in the recruiting and onboarding stages. We'll be fielding the survey in March through May, closing May the 15th. And then in July, that's when we will deliver those institutional reports. And I believe that is it. I don't know if you have our contact information on the last slide. Yes, contact information. And then at our surveys at trellisstrategies.org is the best place to reach us. That email goes to myself, Allyson, Bryan, and then Courtney. So between the four of us, we can get you guys a answer on any questions you have and get you set up with the survey. And I just saw a question coming through. Is it too late to participate this year? No, we are in the active recruitment and onboarding process right now. So on our end, it is absolutely not too late. The only reason it would be too late is just depending on how quickly or slowly things go on your institutional side for any institutional approvals or things like that. Some institutions may require an IRB. If you do, that's something that we're able to help with as well. And then if your institution requires a data sharing agreement, that's something that we can help with. Let's see questions. Is there a contract to sign? There is not a contract that we have to sign. There is a letter of intent template that we can share with you if your institution would like to have something that is signed just for your records and for our records. But there is nothing that is required. And then I see is the email with the survey is going to be sent by you or the institution. It would come out from us. So directly from our Qualtrics system, the survey invitation and reminders all come directly from us. We try to make it as low lift as possible for you all. So that is the reason for the data file is we use that data file to send the survey.
Yeah, there's quite a few questions coming in, both in the chat and the Q&A. So that's really great to see. Let's see here. Would like to get started. Maybe grouping some questions as it makes sense. So I do see a few questions coming in on response rates. So we have been doing these surveys at various institutions, and the response rates can vary quite a bit. It depends on the quality of the contacts, right? The further back that we go, the more likely that a student might have changed their email or their phone number since departing or are not ultimately arriving to the institution. Our average response rate for this type of survey kind of ranges between 7 to 10%. It can be as low, as maybe 2% if we're looking at quite old contacts. But also we've seen rates as high as 20, 24, 13, 14, 15%. So that really just varies institution to institution. But we have been tracking that the entire time that we have been fielding these surveys since about 2018. There's also a few other logistical questions that I could probably answer. One is about phone numbers. So we don't ask for phone numbers. The data request is essentially first name, last name, and then a personal email address so we can contact the student. If there's other variables of interest that your institution would like us to conduct analysis by, you can provide those as well. And then we would also get for the Some College No Credential survey, we would get the last term the student attended, and then also their field of study or their major. But those ultimately are optional. And if your institution is unable to provide those variables, that's something that we can work around for sure. For the non-matriculating student survey, we would ask for the term that they applied and maybe the field of study or degree they applied to, if that was indicated in their admissions application. Phone number can be provided. It's a good backup if we're unable to reach students through email, but it's absolutely not required to participate in the study. So let me just start crossing off some of these questions. And then I see someone ask in the chat if we call the students as well. We do not call students through the surveying efforts, but we do have a pretty robust call center and texting center here at Trellis that we co-partner with to call or text interested students on your behalf. But as part of the survey effort, we do not directly call students to ask them to participate in the survey. I'm also seeing some questions on co-branding. So we have been doing this work with students, like Bryan mentioned earlier. We have surveyed millions of students, and we found the best way to help students maybe understand the survey as legitimate or coming, not spam, as making sure that we're customizing the survey for each institution. So the survey invitation that the students receive would be something like, for instance, I graduated from Texas State University, so go Bobcats, but also it would say, Texas State University needs your feedback, or Texas State University wants to hear from you. And then we would kind of customize it, and the student would see all the references in the survey would point to Texas State University or the institution in question. And that also helps us provide kind of legitimacy. There's also an opportunity for the institution, if you want to send up a heads up email to these students, even though they're not current students, that can also provide some authority to the survey itself and help those surveying efforts. Oh, righty. I've seen a few questions coming in on if this is a survey that's easy to implement to a wide variety of students, beyond kind of what we consider to be traditional undergraduate students versus adult online or non-traditional learners. There's absolutely the ability for the survey to be used for a diverse range of undergraduate student populations. We can field this to graduate students, but the goal of the survey ultimately, for both survey products, like Bryan was saying, is to help re-engage these students and get them back onto campus and on that pathway to earning a degree or credential. And so we have fielded this survey to diverse sets of students across all types of institutions, 4-year private, 4-year public, 2-year technical colleges, 2-year community colleges that serve a wide variety of students. So not only adult learners or those FTIC traditional students, but also non-traditional and online learners as well. And we have seen success in those different populations.
I see a question about how to actually submit the data. So we have a spreadsheet template and how you submit that template. In the survey materials, we do have a list of those variables that we're looking for those students that Allyson mentioned. For the non-matriculating students, student name, names and emails, and then for some college and credential students, ideally adding their last semester of attendance as well as their major. And then that is all uploaded through our secure file sharing software, which is called Crush FTP. So once you sign on to participate, we'll send you information for how to get signed up for Crush FTP. It's totally free. And then you will submit the data file through there. So that's just a way that we can be sure that we're not sending, student information across email.
Yeah, thanks, Abby. I'm also seeing some questions about the institutional reports and what's included in that. So I can speak to that for a bit. So the institutional reports are basically customized to each institution. It would have your data aggregated and anonymized. It would be tied to any particular student. So it would be a report that looks at your frequencies for each of the survey questions. We can also do cross-tab or chi-square analyses as needed or as requested by the institution, but we're not doing those by default to kind of minimize the intricacy and difficulty of completing these analyses. But we also will be providing benchmarks to other institutions who participate in your sector. We are currently not able to do customized peer benchmarking, but that is something that we could probably look into on a case-by-case basis. But in general, institutions will receive a customized report that has their aggregated frequencies for their institution compared to other institutions in your sector. So if you are a 2-year technical college, you'd be compared to other 2-year technical colleges. If you're a 4-year public, you would be compared to other 4-year publics. And then we could kind of check in on a case-by-case basis to see if there's the ability, based on the institutions participating in the survey, to do more detailed kind of peer benchmarking than kind of just broadly across the sectors. We also provide an infographic. It's a 1-page for anyone who participated in our student financial wellness survey. You've probably received that 1-page high-level infographic that kind of has nice talking points that you can shop around to funders or to folks in your administration. And so that's a nice kind of piece as well. So in addition to the report, you also get that infographic that you can kind of use to shop around or to drive the data points home in a really easy, nice, digestible format. Just going through our questions, I love to see it. Just kind of managing these. Okay, I'm also seeing some questions about customizing the instrument. So we are fielding this nationally across all interested institutions across the country. So we are trying to maintain as much fidelity in the survey instrument as possible, but we are open to customization. And so if your institution is interested in potentially adding a question for a population or modifying what's in the survey, there's already some degree of customization built in because we do gauge satisfaction with different areas on campus. And as we all know, there's many very different names for the same office on campus. You can have financial aid office, student financial services, office of financial aid. So we kind of have that built in where we customize those department names to each institution. But we also could consider additional requests for customization on a case-by-case basis, and you would just work directly with me or Abby on that. And then I also saw a question come in about providing incentives. So we do provide incentives for the survey. Abby, can you remind me what that incentive is? I know it's across the survey, it's a raffle.
Let me pull it up because I always mix up the numbers because we're fielding like 4 different surveys right now and I get them switched. So let me pull that up while you answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So another question that came in was about if the institution can provide an incentive for participation. That's great. That's definitely something we can facilitate. And we do see higher response rates when we offer the Trellis-wide, kind of survey-wide incentive, in addition to incentives targeted to the school. And we would just work with you on a case-by-case basis to get that information added to the survey for your students. And then in all of the email introductions, reminders, those incentives would be included in that outreach so students know that there is an incentive for participation. Yeah, Abby.
$20, $50 gift cards.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Abby. So we are offering that across the survey, and all students at the end of the survey, we close everything by May 15th. And then we would draw the incentives using a random number generator through a SAS or STATA program for students who qualified and consented to the survey. And then we distribute those all on your behalf. So the institution doesn't really need to do any work for that incentive distribution unless you have a campus or institution specific incentive that you'll be distributing after your survey closes. And then saw a question about confidentiality in light of potentially small cell sizes. So we've fielded hundreds and hundreds of surveys on behalf of institutions. And this is something that we always keep in mind when we are doing analysis and reporting. So since we're doing, overall just frequencies by default for this project, and then those chi-squares and maybe cross-tab analyses upon request, we wouldn't necessarily be looking or disclosing, if there's only a certain amount of students in one category or the other, we wouldn't be disclosing that back to the institution. And so we do our best to maintain student confidentiality with that. And then we work really hard to de-identify all of our surveys as soon as possible and kind of follow best data practices to make sure that our data is secure and locked down. Also saw a question about anonymity when sending gift cards. So these surveys are not anonymous. We do collect information just by how the nature of the survey is designed. We collect their contact information, but when we distribute the gift cards, the spreadsheet and the kind of documents that we use to draw the survey winners and then distribute those are we remove any of their responses. So it's just their contact information and basically that they consented to the survey. And that's all that's included when we are looking to distribute those gift cards. I saw another survey, a follow-up question come in on the population for the survey. And it's not geared towards any particular student. We have fielded this with online institutions, 2 years, 4 years, across all learner types. We have seen respondents as young as 18 come in, but also, respondents who are in their mid-50s or 60s who have stopped out or are not matriculated at an institution. So the instrument is generalizable, and it's not particularly built for FTICs or adult learners, but really kind of encompasses a broad range of experiences that kind of reflect that modern learner that Bryan mentioned earlier. And I see this question coming in again about the survey being anonymous. So no, this is not an anonymous survey. We use email campaigns through Qualtrics to send out the invitation. This survey has gone through IRB at several institutions, and there are no foreseeable risks to participating. We do our best to make sure that the survey is not asking invasive or personal questions. And then if we need to go through IRB at an institution, that is something that we can also do. But since this isn't a research product, this is really a product to better understand students who have stopped out and get them back onto campus. That would be not really considered generalizable research. And so not really subject to IRB, but we have gone through IRB for this survey, both the non-matriculation and the some college no credential. All right, there are a lot of questions, so we're trying to get through them all. So just appreciate y'all's patience. I see a question coming in about incentives. So let's see, we can provide a date and timestamp for students of when each response came in, but that wouldn't be tied to any student records. So we could essentially provide a date and timestamp as a standalone file, but that wouldn't be tied to any student records or responses. So I hope that's what you're looking for, and please follow up if that's not. Okay. I'm also seeing questions about what we're asking for in that data request. So that data request, roll back up here. We're really just looking for student names, their first name and their last name and their personal email address. You can provide any other variables that you would like to. We also would love to get their last term studied or the term they were admitted or semester they were admitted, as well as the field of study or major or program that they were interested in or pursuing at your institution. But we're not asking for date of birth, gender, race, ethnicity. There are demographic questions at the end of the survey where we collect that information, but they're all optional questions and students are not forced to answer those questions. And in general, every question on the survey is optional except for the consent form statement where students agree to the terms and conditions of the study.
And I'm seeing a question here about giving, someone asked if we'd be able to give each institution back information by student on updated contact information, and we will. So each student is asked if they are interested in sharing updated contact information with the institution, if they are interested in either re-enrolling or, in the case of those non-matriculated students, enrolling for the first time. And we will give institutions that list of students who answer that they are interested in that, as well as that contact information so that you can work with those students to get them enrolled.
Yeah, perfect. And then that is covered in the informed consent form. So students, it's very clear to students that they are explicitly opting in to share their contact information back to the institution. But then we do also tell students that their identifiable responses beyond that contact, the phone number, email, that will not be shared back to the institution. So we can go ahead and answer this question about a raw data file. We will not provide back a raw data file to institutions. That's something that we do cover in our informed consent form. We are able to provide, upon request, a de-identified data file for the institution. That's also covered in our informed consent form, but we would not be able to provide that raw data file back because we find that that can help, that can influence students' responses and willingness to participate in the survey. And where I think Trellis Strategies really adds value here is that we are coming in as an impartial third-party provider that doesn't have necessarily that connection to the institution that the student may be wary of if they are providing back that raw data file. So lots of questions on that. So that answers a bunch of the questions that we have open here. And then I also see another question came in about adding one or two specific questions for their institution. You can definitely, we are open to those requests. The survey is about 40 questions to 35 questions long for each instrument. So I do want to make sure that we're conscientious of what we're asking students to complete and how long we're asking them to spend on the survey. It takes on average about 8 to 10 minutes. We do use display logic and skip logic, so students aren't presented with every question if they're not applicable to them. But we are able to take those customization requests and take a look at that. And you could just work with Abby or I to kind of see what that might look like for your institution. But we are open to adding a select number of questions for institutions, especially to capture data that makes the most sense for your college or university. All right. And then we have one last question here, which I just encourage. I know we've been answering a lot of questions. And so if you have questions that we didn't answer today or that you want more information on, just going to scroll back to the slide. You can go ahead and email us at surveys@trellisstrategies.org. And like Abby mentioned, that includes me, Bryan, Abby, and then our colleague Courtney. And we are more than willing to answer questions, schedule a one-on-one meeting, or kind of do a deeper dive to make sure that these instruments work for your institution. You can also just scan the QR code and that will directly pop up in your email application or browser. That will pop up the surveys at trellisstrategies.org and kind of let it take it from there. And then the last question I'm seeing right now asks if we can provide a random ID number that you would provide back to the institution on students who are willing to be contacted. So when we do provide back that list of students who are willing to be contacted, whether it's in the non-matriculating student survey or the Some College No Credential survey, that does have their first name, last name, email, and phone number. And as part of our data request, we do also ask if you are willing or wanting us to do some looking at the survey responses by educational records, we do ask for a unique ID that is not their student ID, but that is something that we can facilitate. And so if you want to kind of do a crosswalk between the responses and students, maybe their educational records, GPA, SAP status, anything like that, that is something that we're able to do. And so you would just provide us with that unique ID, and then you would crosswalk that to their actual student ID on your end. We just kindly request that you don't provide us with student IDs, if at all possible. Okay, and then someone asked about the difference between these two surveys. And so they are similar, but as Abby and Bryan mentioned, they are completely different populations. So the easiest way for us to look at it, right, for the non-matriculating student survey, these are students who were admitted to your institution, accepted. They may have even registered, they may have even enrolled, had advising, but ultimately they never matriculated onto campus. So that first semester they were supposed to enroll and attend classes, they never came. So these could be students who dropped out during your admission kind of pipeline, or students who ultimately, they completed that entire process, but ultimately just never made it to campus or never started classes if you're an online only institution. And then so these are students, simply these are students who were prospective and they never converted into actual students at the institution. For the Some College No Credential survey, this survey is looking at students who attended at least a few weeks of classes at your institution, but then ultimately they stopped out without returning to campus. So these are kind of your traditional stop out students, students who were enrolled, but then maybe due to various circumstances, like we see in this slide, maybe it was a financial crisis, maybe they needed to leave college to take care of family or do some caregiving, but that ultimately they were not able to stay at the institution and persist through graduation. I hope that clears it up, but also we will be sending out the recording of this webinar along with the survey materials packets for either instrument, and that will have more information on the survey as well as the data request, the informed consent form that your students see, and then an overview of the project and timeline, and that will hopefully help kind of clear up any ambiguity that y'all might have after the webinar today. Okay, so more questions coming in. This is great. So let's see. In regard to we have a question. In regards to following up with training for responders, do you have content for non-traditional 36 and up students? So we do offer technical assistance to help re-engage students. That is kind of carried out by my colleague, Steve Smith, and his team. But we could definitely kind of take a look at any targeted consulting or technical assistance that your institution might want as a result of the survey and what results we capture. But by default, the research team, we're really engaged in collecting these responses, completing analysis on your behalf, and then giving you those insights. But we can also follow that up with consulting and technical assistance if that's something your institution is interested in. And just go ahead and connect with us at this surveys@trellisstrategies.org email, and we can kind of get you connected to that side of the house as well. I also see a question about how far back we should survey students. What is the earliest year? So we recommend providing at least 3 years, but no more than 5 years of stop out students. We've been doing these surveys not only for stop outs, but also for students who have not matriculated for about 5 to 6 years now. And what we found is that really 3 to 5 years is that sweet spot for really either survey. So if we're thinking through the Some College No Credential instrument, that would be students who stopped out as early as spring 2020 at this point, and then as kind of late as fall 2022. But also that is something that we can customize based on the needs of your institution. There's not a hard and fast rule for kind of either survey as far as how far we can go back. And in that survey materials packet you'll receive for the non-matriculating student survey and the Some College No Credential survey, it'll kind of have that data request and suggested parameters for each population included. So you can review that and then follow up with us at that surveys@trellisstrategies.org email if you have follow-up questions based on that data request or what's outlined in the scope of work. Okay, Abby, I think that might be all the questions.
That is all that I am seeing right now. But if you have any questions, like Allyson said, please reach out to that surveys@trellisstrategies.org. We will get you, we will be able to answer those questions there. We can also set up a meeting to discuss further if that would be helpful to have, be able to answer your questions one-on-one.
Yeah, perfect. Let's see here. Yes, and we will be sending out a link to this recording after we have cleaned it up a little bit and added closed captioning to just promote accessibility. That will be available on our website, also through YouTube. And then we will be sending out a recording to all who registered for the webinar, not just those who attended. And that will be available on demand. And that email will also include more information about the surveys, as well as the kind of overview packets for the Some College No Credential, and then also the non-matriculating student survey. And we should be sending those out either later this week or early next week. And if you have any questions in the meantime, just like Abby mentioned, you can please reach out to us at surveys@trellisstrategies.org. And we're more than happy to connect either one-on-one or in a group meeting with folks on your campus, if that makes the most sense.
And someone asked, when can we receive the next step email to participate? So if you mean next steps as far as this is kind of your first introduction, like Allyson said, you'll receive that follow up from us in the next couple of days. And then you can reach out to that email. If you mean that I know at least one person has emailed us during this presentation saying that they're on board to participate and they want next steps, you could expect to hear from us in 24 business hours. And then, Allyson, I don't know if you want to answer this question about some old reports or a sample report.
Right. So as Bryan mentioned at the top of the hour, this is our first national administration of both surveys. So we do not have kind of a aggregator report. All the work that we've done so far has been for institutions. And so we don't have anything, just like we would with your data, we're not sharing any institution's data beyond that campus. So we don't have any sample reports, but I would point you to our Trellis Strategies Research Hub, where you can pull up research that we have done on these topics. Let me just pull that up real quick. And then I mentioned my colleague, Steve Smith. He's another director over here at Trellis Strategies. He's also written a stop out, a toolkit on how to best re-engage stop out students. And we've had a lot of our partners find that valuable as well. And so let me just pop the link to that in the chat. But this is really our first kind of take, or our first attempt at doing a national administration, and that will allow us to aggregate this data and release public-facing reports like we do with the Student Financial Wellness Survey. And so you can kind of just browse that research hub or take a look at that really excellent toolkit that my colleague Steve wrote on how to support students with Some College No Credential. All right, last call for questions. I think we've answered about 30 to 40 questions, so it's been really great to see everyone so engaged. But just wanted to see if there's anything else before we wrap up a little early today. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions come in. I am just going to drop in the chat so it's super easy for everyone. That Trellis, that survey email, that's surveys at trellisstrategies.org that will connect you to me, Abby, Bryan, and my colleague Courtney, who can assist and triage you with the onboarding and recruitment process for these 2 surveys. And like I mentioned, we will be sending out a recording early next week or later this week that has the webinar cleaned up a little bit, but also those kind of overview materials so you can kind of shop that around with your institution's leadership. And I don't think anything else has come in, so I think we can go ahead and wrap up for today. And I just really appreciate everyone's active engagement and taking the time to meet with us this afternoon. It's been really a great session, and I look forward to hopefully seeing your institutions participate in these 2 free national survey offerings. So just wanted to thank you all so much. Abby, anything to add?
No, just excited to have you all on board and hopefully to connect with some of you.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you guys so much and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.